Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for a webinar on juggling it without dropping the ball. Hi, my name is Debbie Rasica, and I am the coordinator for the Perinatal Addiction Prevention Project at Central Jersey Family Health Consortium. I've had the pleasure of being at the consortium for 12 years, offering educational services for both community folks as well as for professionals. Today, we're really going to focus on some quick methods to deal with stress on a daily basis. We know we're all going through a lot. Our lifestyles have changed. We've lost a lot. We've gained a lot, and still trying to deal with the routines of everyday life. If we don't learn to manage our stress effectively, there really can be some long-term consequences. So let's take a look at some quick 2 ways we can take a look at our methods for dealing with stress and how we can improve upon that. Okay, so what is stress? Stress is something that's very individual to every different person. We all have different responses to what we consider to be stress in our lives. More often than not, when our stress levels rise, our bodies and our brains respond in a way as if we're perceiving a threat. This does set us up for a fight or flight response, and it'd be nice for us to be able to put some techniques together to be able to deal with this and feel in control of what we're doing in our life and how we're managing things. There are many physical changes and emotional changes when we go through short acute periods of stress, as well as long, more chronic periods of stress. And we will go through these as we go further into this webinar. Stress is definitely accumulative. We can't escape it. Unfortunately, none of us live in a vacuum. We all have so many different things influencing our lives, and often we're juggling a lot of different roles and wearing a lot of different hats. You know, we're working, we're chauffeuring our children, we're cooking, we're cleaning, we're teaching, we're being partners to our significant others. The list just keeps going on. And as our lives become more complicated, our stressors tend to go on the rise. That we cannot change. But what we can change is what we do with our stress. And prevention can go a long way. We need to be aware of when our stress levels are becoming unmanageable before some of those real negative consequences can happen. So stress, as I mentioned, is so different for everybody, and we all perceive stress as very different things. What I might find stressful, someone else may not find stressful at all. Doing this webinar for me is a bit stressful. I'm not real great at being recorded, but put me in front of a live audience, and I'm okay with that. That's a comfortable place for me. Yet put me in a more social situation, and for me, I will have a lot more anticipatory stress. So think about yourself and think about what is your perception of stress? How do you perceive when something is a threat to you? There are 3 components that we need to look at when we're looking at our own perception of our own stressors. The first is, what is the significance of that thing that's interfering with your life, that's coming at you? Is it threatening, or is it something that you feel you have the skill set to manage and you know how to kick in what you need to do, take care of business, and keep it moving forward? And as we go through that perception of how threatening something is, we're also doing a self-check. What's our skill set? What are our capabilities? What are my strengths and your strengths that help us get through a situation? What are those psychological reserves we can pull from? And often, if we think back to past experiences and we take a look at, now, how did I get through that? That's the stuff we want to pull back out. That's the stuff that gives us some self-confidence to persevere and see what we can do to manage our stress as effectively as we can. Our responses to stress happen on different levels. It's definitely a subjective experience for all of us. no matter what we're experiencing, whether it's loss, whether it's new challenges, whether it's transition, whether it's change, no matter what may be going on, we all can respond differently. And sometimes, as we're trying to cope as best we can, we end up suffering with symptoms of depression or anxiety or even emotional withdrawal from those support systems around us that we actually need the most when we're finding ourselves in this position. Going through these subjective experiences can be pretty traumatic themselves and make dealing with stress even that much more difficult. Then, on top of it, we can layer some more physical consequences. Many of us feel muscle pain when we're under stress. I can tell for myself, I get pain in my jaw from clenching my teeth. I'll get headaches. I'm real good at having a stiff neck kind of kick in. Think about what are your physical symptoms of stress in terms of how you respond. And we're going to go through more of these later. But think about things like, do you break out in hives? Does your stomach get upset? Do you have trouble sleeping? Think about things that are different from what's normal for you and not a typical response to becoming ill. Even though these stress responses make us do feel very ill at some point. We also go through some behavioral changes to complicate our responses to stress even more. Sometimes we can become easily agitated and irritable. It's sometimes very hard not to snap at the little things when you have a lot of stress building up in your life that isn't being managed very well. And no matter how much we try to put in our best intentions and practice willpower and try to be as pleasant as we can to all of those we're interacting with, none of us are perfect. And there are times where we're going to get annoyed when someone leaves that cap off the toothpaste or doesn't put their dirty dishes back in the sink. Or maybe a coworker didn't follow through on a deadline or a responsibility he or she said they would do. Or your kids interrupt you when you're on a meeting at home trying to juggle it all. It's really hard not to get irritable. And sometimes when we feel like we're jumping out of our skin and it's not very comfortable being inside our skin, we can see some maladaptive behaviors start to surface. And some of those might even be addictive behaviors. And it could be to whatever behavior helps to give some feelings of relief. It could be substance use, it could be food, it could be gambling, it could be sex, it could be online shopping, it could be working out to the extreme where it interferes with other things in your life. The list goes on. But the more awareness we have of these subjective experiences, physical consequences, and behavioral changes, the more we can be in the driver's seat in terms of what we're going to do about this. Because remember, stress, unfortunately, exists in our life. It's not going anywhere. But where our power comes in is choosing what we're going to do with it. And it does need to start with having that self-awareness so that we can do some preventative things. So now what? I've probably just frustrated everybody. Wow, this sounds terrible. This sounds grim. But it doesn't have to be. There are some very simple things we can do that we can just incorporate into our everyday lives. Things that with some practice and giving it importance can really make a very big difference. We do want to move away from this picture into a place where we feel more settled in our skin and in a more comfortable place. So now what? Well, remember, stress isn't what happens, but it's our response to what happens. If I'm having company for dinner and I burn something, or with my typical klutzy way, drop stuff on the floor, I've done that, full dishes that have taken hours to prepare. You know, it happened. But what am I going to do now to deal with that? Am I going to ruin my company's time and not just focus on, okay, there's Klutzy Debbie again doing her thing. Let's see how we can salvage the situation. That's a pretty glib example, especially with a lot of the stressors we're going through, especially in today's day and age. But we can't always change what happens. We can change how we respond. Please keep this in mind always, because it's very impactful in helping us to be in the driver's seat. So it really comes down to choices, right? No matter what life throws at us, we do have the gift of making a choice. We are in that position to do that. We can always do nothing about it. That is a choice. And if we decide to do something, then we can guide that energy and figure out whether we want to do something positive and healthy, or do we want to do something negative? That's probably going to make the situation worse. This isn't always easy. It's very hard to kind of change what we're doing, but we're going to look at some very simple ways to take that positive stance if you choose to take action in coping with your stress. Okay, and that brings us to resilience, right? We all have a whole arsenal of personal habits that we use to cope, that we've built up that portfolio for all of our lives. And some of it's positive, some of it's negative. But we need to take a look at that, and we need to overcome those that don't help us and focus our energy on being able to be resilient. Taking a look at that stress in the face and saying, you're not helping me. I don't want you around. How can I work through you? How can I take control? And we can. We show ourselves every day how resilient we are, especially during this time of COVID, when we all thought we would never be able to adjust and adapt and change our lives. They become so topsy-turvy. But here we are. We're still trying to look at self-growth, professional growth. We're looking at growth in other areas of our life. And this is pretty remarkable. It's truly the best of human nature. And let's really build on that. So how do we do this? So let's go back to your signs of stress. A few slides ago, we talked about some physical and behavioral changes and some subjective changes that do go on when we're under some stress that's really making us uncomfortable. You might start to notice that it's hard to concentrate, or that it's hard to pay attention, which is why this will be a very short webinar. You also might find that short-term memory becomes impaired, where you used to have no difficulty remembering people's names or a telephone number or a quick shopping list that you need to pick up. And by the time you get to the store or even get downstairs, you can't remember why you went downstairs or needed to go to the store. This can certainly increase stress, as all of these symptoms really can. Decision making can often become difficult, and very often it's the little decisions that typically you make automatically and have no difficulty doing so. But all of a sudden, maybe you're feeling just so ambivalent, you can't decide what to make for dinner. Well, I was going to make this, but I don't really know if I want to make that. Well, maybe I should make that. Or maybe no, maybe I should do this. When typically you would have made a decision and kept it moving. Irritability, we talked about that. Feeling overwhelmed, that anxiety, aggression, we talked about that too. Folks might find themselves becoming more tearful. When I start welling up over the silliest commercial or TV show, I know I need to take a look at my stress level and see what I can do to lower things so I can feel more comfortable. Some of us feel fatigue. We just can't raise our energy level, so that everything becomes even more overwhelming. Sleep and eating are two things that very noticeably change for most of us when our stress levels are becoming unmanageable. Maybe we have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. or we're having really bad dreams that kind of follow us into our waking time, or we can't sleep enough. We just want to sleep around the clock, and no matter what we do, we're tired all the time. Eating habits, a change in whatever is normal for you should set off a warning bell that stress levels are becoming a bit high and we need to manage them better. I know for myself, it depends on what my stress is. I can either lose my appetite completely, or I crave my carbs and I crave salt and all those things that are terrible for me. When I'm feeling healthy, it's easier for me to make healthier eating decisions. So think about that. Do you graze when you're stressed? Can you just kind of spend the day grazing through the kitchen, finding everything and anything? Because as we chew and as we have that hand to mouth activity, believe it or not, it does calm our central nervous system, and our brain really does like that. So take a look at that. Do your eating habits change when your stress level is going up? We talked about muscle pain, whether it's in your head or in your neck or in your back. Ladies, we are more prone to suffer headaches and neck and back pain, where gentlemen are more apt to suffer stomach problems than us as women. That's not to say that we don't have our share of stomach responses to stress, but it seems that men harbor their stress more in their bellies than we do. We seem to like to put them into muscle groups and get physical pain or jaw pain. I mentioned clumsiness. That's one of my telltale signs. I find I walk into more doors and corners and trip more and drop things more and do all those klutzy things way more when I'm under stress. And if you think about it, it makes sense for some of us. We can often be so preoccupied with what is stressing us that we may not be paying as much attention as we need to our surroundings and our environment. And it can become dangerous negotiating our physical space through environments if we're not paying attention. Do you find you giggle more when you're under stress? Not that laughter is a bad thing, it's actually a wonderful thing. Sense of humor is a great coping strategy. But I'm talking about that giggling that happens at the most inappropriate times. You know, when that laughter, that giggle breaks out and you just feel sort of mortified that I cannot believe that just came out of me. That too can be a sign of increased stress. The next one is really telling. Are you sighing a lot? Learning to work in the land of cubes, as I like to call them, our workplace, most of us are in cubicles. I realized that my sighing can be heard by everybody. I always used to work in a closed office with a door and four walls. But all of a sudden, many of us are finding ourselves more in a fishbowl. We need to be aware of if we're sighing a lot. It is a sign that you're not breathing effectively, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. But it is also a sign of fatigue, anxiety, and depression. It's our way of oxygenating our brains to try to feel better. It's not particularly effective, but it's a great warning sign. And when it's used that way, it actually can be effective if we learn to do something with that. We talked about isolation already, and we talked about some unhealthy behaviors such as overspending, smoking, substance use, etc. So this is a very short list of signs and symptoms that stress may be becoming unmanageable. But take a look at your own list and do your own inventory, because it's really important to catch these things as they begin, because we're then in a better position to be able to do something effectively about it. Okay, so now that we looked at a very long list of signs and symptoms of stress, we also need to learn to recognize our feelings. Because when we think about stress, typically it's uncomfortable, unpleasant feelings that rise up and increase all the things that we've already talked about. None of the things on this page feel good at all. And this looks like a lengthy list, but it's really not. And it's important rather than to assume you're just feeling angry. Anger typically is the tip of the iceberg. In our culture, it seems to be more acceptable for us to become angry at times rather than to feel vulnerable and uncomfortable with a lot of the feelings listed on this page. I am very willing to share this PowerPoint, so please don't feel you have to study these lists closely. Feel free to reach out to myself or to Daisy, and we can easily get this PowerPoint to you. My contact information, by the way, is on the very first slide. You have my phone number, but I more recommend emailing since I am working from home. So it's easier to get emails than it is phone calls. But look at just some of these things that can tend to push our buttons and really increase our stress level. When we feel disrespected or criticized or humiliated or invalidated or resentful, taken advantage of, right? Being forced to do things, being manipulated, being told we can't do things, and feeling suffocated, feeling trapped. Maybe we feel just discouraged and insignificant, or being misunderstood. That's a big one. Or maybe we just don't feel important, or we don't feel supported. Or maybe we're feeling a whole bunch of these at the same time. Take a look at this list. When you start to feel badly, think about what you're feeling. We cannot control what we feel, but we can control what we do with the feeling. And when we choose to change our actions, feelings subsequently can change. So if what you're feeling feels healthy, positive, you like what you're feeling, take a look at what you're doing and see if you can keep that feeling around. But when feelings aren't pleasant, when they're uncomfortable, then we need to take a look at, if we choose to take action, what can I do to relieve this? Feelings can go away when we deal with them effectively. But remember, we do not have an on-off switch for our feelings. So when we're being told we shouldn't feel that way, don't be stupid, you're just being oversensitive, all that negative talk, which we're going to get into next, really can put a kibosh on our ability to manage all of these uncomfortable feelings. This is where we can become empowered. So recognize what is stressing you, what signs and symptoms you're experiencing, and what are you feeling? Self-talk. We are our own worst critic. We never treat ourselves nearly as kindly as we treat other people. Hopefully, these words don't enter into your self-talk because it's not comfortable. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't allow us to feel good inside our own skin. When we start labeling things and calling ourselves a failure or not good enough, or you feel useless and hopeless and I'm just stupid and I must be worthless, we're really locking ourselves into a position where it's very hard to climb out of. But by just being aware of what we're thinking and making a concerted effort to change that self-talk and to provide to ourselves some of that same self-talk, we often can easily provide to other people, especially those of us in any kind of giving profession where we work with the public, where we're healthcare providers, educators. We care. We want to make life better for others. So why not start by making it better for ourselves? There's nothing horrible and pathetic about any of us. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. None of us are perfect, but we can certainly capitalize on our strengths, and we can work to either accept our limitations or be kind to ourselves and gently work with ourselves to improve while being kind along the way. This slide is more indicative of how we talk to others. So how about we talk to ourselves this way? I am a winner. I am the best friend I have, and my own company is just fine. I've accomplished harder stuff than this. Remind ourselves of our successes in the past. I have the ability to reach my goals. I'm capable. I deserve to be in good shape. I am responsible for my own feelings. No one made me feel a certain way. It's just my feeling. And if it's not comfortable, I need to figure out how to feel better. I'm deserving of that. And I can be free of guilt today. Because for today, for the moment, I'm doing the best I can. Change is a blessing if we're working forward. We can do this. We have a right to feel, and our possibilities are endless. Each step is a step toward personal growth. Doesn't matter if that step goes sideways, backwards, diagonally. As long as we're moving and we're trying, there is nothing that we can't handle. So this is just some examples of some positive self-talk. So when you find yourself with those negative things flashing through your brain like a neon sign, change the sign. We have that ability to do that. It's really okay. It is. And no matter what we're going through, no matter how bad a feeling is, it will lighten up. It will get easier. Sometimes we just have to tough it through. Other times we have to figure out what we can do to change what's going on. But remember, it's really okay. We all have stress. We all have stories. Nobody's life is perfect. Maybe it looks that way on the outside, but nobody's life is perfect. But we all do the best we can and take it day by day, minute by minute, and count our simple blessings. So now, in our last bit of time together, now that we've gained all this self-awareness and learned how to prevent things from getting bad by looking at our signs or symptoms, our particular stressors, long-term, short-term, chronic, acute, big ones, little ones, positive ones, negative ones, how do we just incorporate strategies into our everyday life so that we can deal with those uncomfortable feelings? And doing that, we need to change that self-talk so that we can take action. And here are some very simple strategies. Sometimes we need to give ourselves time out, or other people in our lives the freedom of having some time out. It's really okay to take a break, whether by doing it through some simple breathing exercises, changing the thought. I like to call that thought stopping. Instead of I'm stupid and such a failure, about, well, you know what? At least I tried and I can figure out what went wrong and I can try again. Truly, the only failure is not trying at all. As long as we're taking steps, we're making effort, we are a success. Thought stopping. I recommend making a physical stop sign for yourself to leave in your car, by your bed, or in the bathroom, so that you can visualize that stop sign when your thoughts are becoming negative, which will increase the negative feelings, which then can often increase the negative, unhealthy behavior. We need to recognize that thought and change it up. Thought stopping. So please, everybody, if you have some construction paper and a red marker, make a stop sign, tape it onto a popsicle stick or a coffee stir, and you'll have your own stop sign. And that's to use for you, not to put in someone else's face and use for them. It's to give ourselves a chance to take a break so that we can be more in control of our behavior. It's okay to leave a situation before it escalates. It's okay to turn to a person and say, you know what? I am so upset right now. I need to take a break and walk away so I don't say things I don't mean. And let's plan to get back together later today, tomorrow morning, whatever might be realistic. It's okay to leave a situation if you need to, if by staying, things are going to get a lot worse. Relaxation techniques. We all keep hearing about the importance of exercise and the importance of meditation, and whatever that form might take for you today. Folks are being pretty creative with their forms of exercise and relaxing. And I don't think we'll go through some relaxation techniques today, but in the next actually webinar that I'm going to offer, we can do it then. Okay, let's take a look at the rule of 7. This goes right along with thought stopping and our breathing. These are things we can kick in within seconds. As we find ourselves getting upset, is this going to matter in my life in 7 seconds? About 7 minutes, 7 hours, 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months. That allows us to put things into perspective and take a look at our values, our priorities. What's really important to us? Do I really have to get into it with my kids at their room? You know, it was always messy. My kids are grown now, but their rooms used to be quite messy. I could close their doors. I don't have to look at it. You know, I could choose that that's just not going to matter in the scheme of things in our life. And I think, if anything, that is one of the positives that have come out of this COVID-19 is that it's given all of us a chance to reprioritize. Is it really worth sweating the little stuff? Not really. And I truly wish, with all my years of experience, I would have been able to have that wisdom years ago. Would have been much easier. The next tip is one of my favorites, and this strategy I call Q-tip. And Q-tip means quit taking it personally. Most things that go on, it's not personal. When someone forgets to call or say good morning, or they're late, or they didn't empty the dishwasher, or they never showed up at the meeting, it's not personal. Trust me, everybody has stuff going on. We don't know people's stories. If someone didn't say good morning, they probably were preoccupied and dealing with their own stuff. It's not that they're mad at you or you did something wrong. So as we start to react and take things the wrong way, we can take a breath in through our nose, slowly out through our mouth. Picture that stop sign, change that neon sign flashing across our forehead, and remind ourselves it's not personal. So Q-tip, quit taking it personally. And let's kick in that rule of 7s. Is it really going to matter in the scheme of my life that so-and-so never called today? Well, it might. Okay, then follow through. But truly, it's not going to matter whether you talk to them tomorrow or the next day. Is it worth it for us to allow ourselves to get into that negative space? We can change it with that thought stopping. Okay, there are only 2 slides left, and these things we've talked about throughout. And they're nothing uncommon. Exercise. Sometimes it's the last thing we feel like doing when we're stressed out. But even if you walk to the end of your driveway, the end of your street, the end of your block, even if you get on that treadmill for 2 minutes, you're getting your blood moving. It's important. Find what works for you. Hobbies, 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 and that can be anything. My last slide will explore some simple things many people are including in their lives now that maybe they hadn't before. Support systems. We can't do things alone. It's okay to reach out for help. Say, I don't understand. Can you help me with this? Feeling out of sorts today. Telling ourselves. When we tell on ourselves, stuff loses its power. And people have a better shot of understanding what we're going through and what might be helpful for us. And remember, when we allow our support systems in, we're doing them a favor. It helps to help people. We all know that. So how about we set an example and be kind to ourselves and give that gift to those around us and allow them to support us when we need it. Let's change those irrational beliefs. It's not personal. And you know what? I did break a nail today, and it didn't thrill me. But really, is it going to matter in the scheme of life? No. My husband did laundry and turned one of my shirts pink. One of my favorite shirts. You know what? Oh well. Life goes on. I now have a pink shirt instead of a white one. It's all about changing those irrational beliefs. And remember, when we're going through it, when that pain is intense, that emotional or physical pain, it'll pass. It's temporary. Discomfort has a tendency to ease as time goes on. But as we deal with the stressors and juggling that ball every day, what are we doing to just give back a little to ourselves? Are you taking that bubble bath? You know, it's physically impossible to be tense, to have your muscle groups tense when you're immersed in hot water. So ease that back pain and that neck pain and that headache by immersing yourself in a fragrant bubble bath. Light some candles, have a cup of herbal tea, put on your favorite music. Take that half hour. You deserve it, and more importantly, it's necessary. That yoga, those little mats, right? Those yoga mats go anywhere. Puzzles. I grew up doing puzzles with my mom. Some of my favorite winter memories. I am amazed at how many people are now doing jigsaw puzzles at home and turning them into art by gluing them together and hanging them on the walls. Simple, inexpensive things that we can be doing at home. Many of us who never cooked before are finding that it's really fun to immerse in cooking. It's truly one of my favorite things. I can get lost inside of that activity. I love feeding people. My stress goes away, I get in my zone, put on some good tunes, and I can cook away, and I'm in a happy place. Maybe I'm journaling, or I'm going to start doing scrapbooks, or learn to knit, or learn to crochet, or do sand art, or crossword puzzles, or color. Simple activities, blowing bubbles, playing an instrument. You know, the list is endless, and one slide I thought we could kind of address all those things. And you never know what might interest you and might not feel good until you give it a shot. Try it. Maybe you want to learn to make pasta or bread at home. Maybe you really want to make that baby blanket for your new niece or nephew who's on the way. Now's a good time. Find the time to engage and take care of yourself. And remember, it's usually not personal. And the rule of sevens. You engage in any of these activities, probably in 7 minutes, 7 hours, hopefully, at the worst. Whatever that stressor is, won't seem so bad anymore. Well, I hope this has been helpful. Some quick ideas in how to really empower ourselves to negotiate our own lives, all the things we juggle, all the things we do. We're pretty special. We need to take care of that so we can continue to be well, be happy, and help take care of those we love. Thank you all for participating, and feel free to contact me if you would like a copy of this PowerPoint. Thank you again. Bye-bye.